I never thought I'd be writing this post, but I need to get this off my chest and maybe get some advice from people who've been through something similar. This whole situation feels like a nightmare I can't wake up from. I'm Mason, and up until 3 months ago, I thought I had the perfect life with my wife, Emma. It all started on what should have been a normal Tuesday evening. I run a successful software development company, and I was working late at the office, dealing with a major client crisis. Emma had been acting strange for a few weeks, being overly protective of her phone, working late hours at her real estate agency, and just seeming distant. But I chalked it up to stress from her recent promotion. That night, I received a series of bizarre text messages from my father, Richard. Now, some context. Dad had been living with us for the past 8 months after his divorce from his second wife. He's always been a bit of a ladies' man, but I never thought, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. The texts were clearly meant for someone else. Miss you already, beautiful. Can't wait for our next secret meeting. And then another one. You make me feel young again. My first thought was that Dad had finally started dating again, and I was happy for him. But something about those messages set off alarm bells in my head. I called Emma to let her know I'd be home early, wanting to surprise her with takeout from her favorite Thai place. She sounded flustered and said she was stuck in traffic coming back from showing a house in Highland Park. Here's the thing. I have access to her car's GPS through our family tracking app. We set it up for safety reasons after she had a car accident last year, and her car was parked right outside our house. When I got home, the house was dark except for a faint light coming from our basement, the one we had converted into a home gym/entertainment area last summer. As I approached the basement door, I heard muffled voices and what sounded like laughter, but it wasn't just any laughter. It was Emma's signature giggle, the one I fell in love with 7 years ago when we first met at my best friend Tyler's wedding. I didn't go down those stairs. Something stopped me. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was intuition. Instead, I quietly set up my old GoPro on the basement shelf, pointing it toward the gym area. I told myself I was being paranoid, that there had to be a reasonable explanation. Emma had been talking about starting a fitness YouTube channel. After all, what I didn't know then was that this moment would be the first domino in a series of events that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and my family. But the truth that would eventually come out was far more twisted than anything I could have imagined that night. I went back upstairs and left the house as quietly as I had entered. I texted Emma, saying I had to work even later than expected. She replied almost immediately, "That's okay, babe. Don't work too hard." The irony of that heart emoji still makes me sick to my stomach. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of the most insane 3 months of my life, involving a secret society, a hidden inheritance, and a web of lies that went back decades before I was even born. The morning after the basement incident, I couldn't focus at work. I kept thinking about the GoPro I'd left in the basement, but I couldn't go home to check it. Emma always came home for lunch on Wednesdays, something about maintaining work-life balance. The irony wasn't lost on me. Around 11 a.m., my assistant Sarah buzzed me. There was a messenger with an urgent delivery. The envelope was thick, manila, with no return address. Just my name typed in an old-school courier font. Inside were photos, dozens of them, but they weren't what you might expect. They were pictures of my father at various high society events over the past 20 years, always in the background, always wearing a small silver pin shaped like a chess piece a night. In some photos, he was talking to CEOs, politicians, even a few celebrities. The most recent photo was dated just last week. Dad at the Highland Heights Country Club, the same pin on his lapel, deep in conversation with James Morrison, the tech billionaire who'd recently been in the news for his mysterious disappearance. Along with the photos was a handwritten note. "Your father isn't who you think he is. Neither is Emma. Ask her about Budapest 2019. Here's the thing. Emma and I got married in 2019. Our honeymoon was in Paris. She's never been to Budapest. At least that's what I thought until I found her old passport hidden in her desk drawer last month, with a Hungarian entry stamp from April 2019, 2 months before our wedding. When I confronted her about it that evening, she laughed it off. Oh, that? It was a last-minute business trip. Some clients were interested in international investment. I forgot to mention it because it was so brief and boring. She kissed my cheek and started talking about dinner plans with her sister Amy this weekend. But Emma doesn't have a sister. She's an only child. It's one of the things we bonded over when we first met. When I reminded her of this, she blinked rapidly and said, "Did I say sister? I meant my cousin Amy. You know how close we are. She's like a sister to me." Then she hurried off to take a phone call. I checked her phone records. Yes, I know how that sounds, but at this point, I was starting to question everything. There were dozens of calls to an unlisted number, always late at night or early morning. The call started exactly 8 months ago, the same time Dad moved in with us. That evening, I decided to check the basement gym security camera footage. We had it installed last year after some equipment was stolen. But when I tried to access it, I discovered the entire system had been wiped clean. 8 months of footage gone. I was about to head to the basement to retrieve the GoPro when Dad came home early from his poker night. He looked anxious, something I'd never seen before. He sat me down and said we needed to talk about Mom's death 15 years ago. According to him, it wasn't the car accident we'd all believed it to be. Just as he was about to explain more, Emma burst through the door, looking pale as a ghost. "They found him," she blurted out, seemingly forgetting I was there. James Morrison's body just washed up on the beach. Dad's silver Knight pin glinted under the kitchen lights as he stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. The look that passed between him and Emma in that moment, I can't even describe it, but I knew one thing for certain. My wife and my father were involved in something much bigger and darker than just a potential affair. After the bombshell about James Morrison's death, Emma made some excuse about needing to make urgent calls and locked herself in her home office. Dad disappeared too, mumbling something about checking on his investments. I was left alone in the kitchen, my head spinning with questions. I needed answers, so I did something I'm not proud of. While Emma was busy in her office, I snuck into the master bedroom and started searching. I knew Emma kept a locked drawer in her vanity. She'd always said it contained old family jewelry she was saving for the right moment. I'd never questioned it before. The lock was expensive, but it turned out I didn't need to break it. The key was hidden in the most obvious place, taped under her jewelry box, just like she used to hide her spare house key in college. She told me that story on our third date. Some habits never change, I guess. Inside the drawer, I found a USB drive wrapped in a piece of paper with a series of numbers written on it. 47-23-91-16. The paper had the same Knight symbol that was on Dad's pin. But what really caught my attention was a small leather-bound diary. It was old, the pages yellow with age, and on the first page was my mother's handwriting. If you're reading this, Mason, then things have gone wrong. There are things you need to know about your father, about the organization, and about why I had to fake my death. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the diary. My mother alive? The car accident, the funeral, the years of grief. Was it all a lie? Before I could read more, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I quickly took photos of the first few pages with my phone, replaced everything exactly as I'd found it, and slipped out just as Emma returned. That night, I couldn't sleep. Emma tossed and turned beside me, muttering in her sleep, something about the ceremony and final initiation. Around 3 a.m., she got up, thinking I was asleep. I watched through barely open eyes as she retrieved a burner phone from behind the headboard. When did that get there? And went into the bathroom. I pressed my ear to the door and caught fragments of her whispered conversation. Timeline has moved up. Mason's mother. No, he doesn't suspect. The Knights are meeting tonight. Richard says, yes, the inheritance will be. No, the GoPro won't be a problem. My blood ran cold. How did she know about the GoPro? When I checked the basement, the next morning, the camera was gone. In its place was a playing card, the Knight of Spades, with coordinates written on the back. The coordinates led to a cemetery on the outskirts of town, specifically to my mother's grave. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. When I got to work and tried to check my company's financial records, I discovered that ownership of my software company had been quietly transferred 3 months ago. The new owner? A shell corporation called Knight Industries, registered in Budapest. I decided to check the USB drive I'd found. The files were encrypted, but the numbers from the paper unlocked them. What I found? Well, let's just say it made me question everything I thought I knew about my family. And about Emma. There were surveillance photos of me, dating back to my college days. Notes about my habits, my friends, my business decisions. A detailed plan titled Project Mason, with my wedding to Emma marked as Phase 1 complete. I was being watched, studied, manipulated. But why? The final file was a video. It showed a dimly lit room with people in black robes, wearing silver night pins. They were chanting something. And there, in the center of the frame, was my mother, very much alive, standing next to a much younger version of my father. The timestamp? Last week. I knew visiting my mother's grave was probably a trap, but I had to know the truth. I waited until after midnight and drove to the cemetery, parking a few blocks away just in case. The coordinates led to her headstone, but something was different. The ground looked recently disturbed. Using my phone's flashlight, I discovered fresh dirt around the edges of the grave. And there, partially exposed, was a metal handle. It took all my strength, but I managed to pull it up, revealing a hidden compartment beneath the headstone. Inside was a weatherproof case containing a laptop and a letter addressed to me in my mother's handwriting. My dearest Mason, if you're reading this, then you've started to uncover the truth about the Knights of the Silver Realm. Your marriage to Emma wasn't an accident. She was chosen for you, groomed since childhood to become part of our family. You see, our bloodline is special. Your father isn't just a member of the Knights. He's the Grandmaster's son, which makes you the heir to not only an enormous fortune, but also to powers you can't yet comprehend. Emma's role was to ensure you never discovered your true heritage until the right moment. But something has gone wrong. James Morrison discovered something he shouldn't have about the Knight's true purpose. Now that he's dead, events have been set in motion that can't be stopped. Don't trust Emma. Don't trust Richard. And most importantly, don't drink anything they give you at the upcoming business dinner this Friday. They're planning to initiate you through a ritual that will bind you to the Knights forever. There's a safe house in Montreal. The laptop has the details. Go there, and I'll find you. Love, Mom. I was about to open the laptop when I heard footsteps on the gravel path. I quickly closed the compartment and hid behind a large memorial statue. Through the darkness, I saw Emma and a group of people I didn't recognize, all wearing those silver night pins. They were carrying what looked like ceremonial daggers and heading toward my mother's grave. Emma was wearing a black robe with red trim, different from the ones I'd seen in the video. She seemed to be leading the group. The heir must be prepared, I heard her say. Mason's awakening cannot be delayed any longer. The stars align on Friday, and the Grandmaster demands his grandson take his rightful place. Grandson? But that would mean? My phone chose that exact moment to ring. I'd forgotten to silence it. The sound echoed through the cemetery. I recognized the caller ID. Dad. Emma's head snapped in my direction. He's here. Find him. I ran, my heart pounding. Behind me, I could hear them spreading out, searching. I made it to my car and sped away, but not before seeing something that chilled me to my bone. Emma's eyes were glowing an unnatural silver color in my rearview mirror. When I got home, Dad was waiting in the kitchen. Son, we need to talk, he said calmly, as if this were any other night. There's something you should know about your real father, the Grandmaster. But before he could continue, my vision started to blur. The coffee he'd handed me when I walked in, I should have remembered Mom's warning about not accepting drinks. The last thing I saw before losing consciousness was Dad's silver night pin transforming into what looked like a tiny living chess piece, its metal horse head turning to look at me with glowing eyes. I woke up strapped to a chair in what appeared to be my own basement, but it was different. The walls were covered in ancient symbols that seemed to move when I looked directly at them. The gym equipment was gone, replaced by ornate candle holders and a large circular pattern etched into the floor. Finally awake, darling? Emma's voice came from behind me. She walked into view wearing that same black and red robe from the cemetery. I know this is overwhelming, but everything we've done has been for your own good. Your awakening can't wait any longer. My head was pounding, but I managed to focus enough to see Dad, Richard, standing next to a tall, imposing figure in an elaborate silver robe. The stranger's face was hidden beneath a hood, but his silver night pin seemed to pulse with an inner light. Mason, the hooded figure spoke, his voice oddly familiar. I am Grandmaster Sebastian, your true father. The man you know as Richard was merely your guardian, tasked with protecting you until you were ready. Emma moved to stand beside them, and that's when I noticed something else had changed. On her left hand, where our wedding ring should have been, she wore a different ring, ancient-looking, with the same knight symbol. But the truly disturbing part was how the metal seemed to flow like liquid mercury around her finger. Your mother's betrayal forced us to accelerate our plans, Sebastian continued. Catherine was supposed to guide you into your power gradually, but she grew conscience-stricken, weak. She chose to flee rather than fulfill her duty to the knights. The company transfer, the surveillance, Budapest. I managed to say through my dry throat. It was all preparation for this. Emma laughed, but it wasn't her usual warm laugh. It was cold, almost metallic. Oh, honey, everything since the day we met has been preparation. Did you really think it was coincidence that I just happened to be at Tyler's wedding? Tyler works for us. Everyone in your life has been carefully chosen and positioned. Richard, or whoever he really was, stepped forward. Even your mother's death was part of the plan, though she deviated from the script by actually escaping instead of accepting her role. He paused, looking almost regretful. We didn't expect her to leave that laptop in the cemetery, though. Clever, Catherine. Always clever. The laptop, I remembered with a jolt. I left it in my car. Is exactly where we need it to be, Emma finished my thought. Your car is being driven to Montreal as we speak. Your mother will come for it. And when she does, she made a slashing motion across her throat. Suddenly, the symbols on the walls began to glow with a silvery light. Sebastian raised his hands, and the circular pattern on the floor ignited with the same metallic flame. The stars are aligned, he announced. Tonight, you will take your place as heir to the Silver Realm. Your blood carries power beyond mortal comprehension, Mason. Everything you think you know about reality is just the surface. As if to demonstrate, he waved his hand, and reality shifted. The basement walls fell away, revealing an endless void filled with crystalline structures and impossible geometries. I could see figures moving in the distance, their forms too alien for my mind to process. Once the ritual is complete, Emma said, her eyes now completely silver, you'll understand why all this deception was necessary. Why I had to play the role of loving wife. The human world is just a shadow, Mason. We are the true reality. But as they prepared for whatever ceremony they had planned, I noticed something they hadn't. The ropes binding my hands were getting looser. And in my pocket, I could still feel the small vial my mother had hidden in the grave's secret compartment, the one I'd managed to grab and hide before Emma's group found me. The label on the vial had read, Anti-Binding Serum. Drink when the void appears. The void around us pulsed with impossible colors as Sebastian began the ritual. More robed figures had emerged from the crystalline structures, forming a circle around me. Each wore a different colored trim on their robes, and their silver knight pins seemed to move in unison, like a synchronized dance of metallic horses. Begin the binding, Sebastian commanded. Emma stepped forward, holding what looked like a chalice made of the same flowing silver metal as her ring. The liquid inside shifted between colors that shouldn't exist. Mason, she said, her voice echoing strangely in the void. Once you drink this, your human limitations will fall away. You'll see why I chosen for this role, why we're all here. But something in her voice caught my attention. A slight tremor, almost imperceptible. Was that guilt? Richard noticed it too. He shot Emma a sharp look, and I saw her compose herself quickly. Too quickly. Something wasn't right here. As Emma approached with the chalice, I felt the vial in my pocket grow warm. The ropes around my wrists had loosened enough that I could probably slip free, but I waited. Mom's diary had mentioned a moment of vulnerability during the ritual, and I needed to time this perfectly. Sebastian began to chant in a language that hurt my ears. The other knights joined in, their voices creating geometric patterns in the air. But as they chanted, I noticed something else, a subtle movement in the crystalline structures behind them. A figure darting between the impossible angles. Someone else was here. Wait! Richard suddenly called out. Something's wrong. The binding circle is incomplete. Emma lowered the chalice, frowning. Impossible. I drew it myself. There, Richard pointed to a section of the glowing circle on the floor. The sigil of containment is flawed. As they argued about the circle, I saw it again, movement in the crystals. This time I caught a glimpse of familiar eyes. Mom's eyes. Sebastian raised his hands, and reality warped again. The void shifted, crystals rearranging themselves into new configurations. "It doesn't matter," he declared. "The stars won't align again for another century. We proceed now." But Emma had gone pale. "My lord," she said to Sebastian, her voice shaking, "if the circle is flawed, the binding could dash." Silence. Sebastian's voice boomed, causing ripples in the void. "You forget your place, initiate. Your role was to prepare him, nothing more." Something about the way he said initiate made Emma flinch. And suddenly I understood. Emma wasn't the high-ranking knight she'd appeared to be. She was being used, just like me. The realization must have shown on my face because Emma's eyes met mine, and for a moment her silver glow flickered, revealing her natural brown eyes beneath. In that split second, I saw something I never expected: fear. Richard stepped forward, grabbing Emma's arm roughly. "Give him the chalice. Now!" As Emma approached me again, the void around us began to vibrate. The crystalline structures hummed with increasing intensity. Something was coming. Sebastian's hood fell back slightly, and I caught a glimpse of his face. My face, but older, twisted wrong. His silver eyes blazed as he raised his arms. "The time is now. The air will dash." He never finished that sentence, because at that exact moment, three things happened simultaneously. One, a massive crystalline structure exploded inward, revealing my mother in full battle gear. Two, Emma tripped, spilling the binding chalice across the ritual circle. Three, Tyler, my supposedly loyal best friend, materialized from the shadows, holding what looked like a modern sniper rifle modified with flowing silver components. "Hello, Father," Mom said to Sebastian, her voice cold as ice. "Miss me?" Chaos erupted in the void. Mom's entrance had shattered not just the crystal structure, but also the careful choreography of the ritual. Knights scattered, their silver pins flashing like frightened fish in the darkness. Tyler's rifle hummed with an otherworldly energy as he took up a defensive position. But what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about this situation. Emma broke free from Richard's grip and shouted, "Catherine, catch!" She threw something small and silver through the air. A data drive, I realized. Mom caught it with practiced ease, her eyes widening in recognition. "You!" Sebastian's voice boomed as he turned on Emma. "You're the mole we've been hunting. You've been working with Catherine all along." Emma's silver eyes flickered and died completely, returning to their natural brown. "Not all along," she said, her voice stronger now, different. "But for the past 8 months. Ever since I discovered what you really did to James Morrison. What you're really planning for the human world." Richard lunged for her, but Emma moved with unexpected grace, her movements suddenly professional, trained. She pulled a small device from her robe and pressed a button. Instantly, her flowing mercury ring transformed into a silvery blade. "Mason," she called out to me, "I know you must hate me right now, and you have every right to. But everything I told you about falling in love with you is real. What wasn't real was my loyalty to the Knights." Mom was working her way toward me through the chaos, engaging Knights with what looked like martial arts but felt wrong, impossible, as if she was bending space itself around her movements. "Emma's telling the truth, honey. She contacted me 8 months ago. She's been our inside source, helping us gather evidence of Sebastian's true plans." Sebastian laughed, the sound causing ripples in the void that made my teeth ache. "Evidence? Of what? That I plan to elevate humanity? To bring them into the true reality they've been blind to for millennia. Evidence that your elevation would kill 90% of the human population." Emma shot back. "The binding ritual isn't just for Mason. It's a test run. You're planning to bind the entire human race to the void, and most won't survive the transformation." Tyler spoke up from his position, his rifle trained on Sebastian. "That's why Morrison had to die. He found the population projections, didn't he? That's why I agreed to help when Emma came to me with the truth." My head was spinning. The vial in my pocket was now burning hot. Mom saw me reach for it and shouted, "Not yet, Mason. The serum has to be used at exactly the right moment, or it could kill you. Richard suddenly moved, faster than humanly possible, and grabbed Emma. But instead of restraining her, he pressed something in her hand and whispered, "East Crystal Sector. Black box. Go." Emma's eyes widened in shock. Richard winked at her before turning to Sebastian. "My lord, the traitor is escaping." Sebastian raised his hands, void energy crackling around them. "After her. The data drive must not leave this realm." As knights rushed past me pursuing Emma, Mom finally reached my chair. While she worked on the remaining ropes, she whispered urgently, "Mason, there's something else you need to know about Emma. Something even she doesn't know. About why she was really chosen for you, Dash." A blast of silver energy cut off her words, throwing us both backward. Sebastian stood over us, his face, my face, twisted in rage. "Enough! If I can't have my heir willingly, I'll take his power by force." He reached for me with hands that were transforming into crystalline claws. That's when I heard Emma's voice echo through the void. "Richard now. Richard, my dad, my protector, the man who raised me," smiled sadly and pulled out a detonator. "I'm sorry, old friend," he said to Sebastian, "but I made a promise to Catherine 16 years ago, and I intend to keep it." He pressed the button. The explosion wasn't what I expected. Instead of fire and shrapnel, the detonator released waves of anti-void energy that shattered the crystalline structures around us. The impossible geometries began to collapse, reality bleeding back in like water, filling cracks. "You fool!" Sebastian roared at Richard, his form flickering between human and something else. "Do you realize what you've done? The void intersection is destabilizing." Mom grabbed my arm. "Drink the serum. Now!" I didn't hesitate. The liquid burned going down, tasting like liquid mercury and starlight. Immediately, my vision shifted. I could see the true nature of everything around me, the layered realities, the threads of void energy connecting the knights to their realm. And something else, something about Emma. She was running back toward us through the collapsing void, clutching a black box. But what I saw with my enhanced vision made me gasp. Emma's entire body was threaded through with void energy, but it was different from the knights. It was older, more primal. "No," Sebastian said, seeing what I saw. "Impossible. You're one of the original bloodline. But they were all destroyed centuries ago." Emma's face showed genuine confusion. "What are you talking about?" Richard stepped between them. "There's a lot you don't know about yourself, Emma. Why do you think your parents died so mysteriously? Why you were chosen specifically for Mason?" Sebastian didn't just want a knight to watch over his heir. He needed someone from the original bloodline to complete the transformation. "The box," Mom shouted. "Emma, open it now." Emma's hands trembled as she opened the black box. Inside was a silver knight chess piece, identical to the knight's pins, but ancient, practically humming with power. The moment she touched it, her eyes blazed not with silver, but with pure golden light. Memories flooded back to her. I could somehow see them too through our connection. Emma, age 5, her parents performing strange rituals. Emma at 12, discovering she could step between realities. Emma at 18, her parents' mysterious death that she now recognized as Sebastian's handiwork. The knights finding her, suppressing her memories, grooming her to be my wife. The original bloodline were the first to discover the void. Richard explained quickly as reality continued to collapse around us. They learned to traverse it without becoming corrupted. Sebastian's ancestors destroyed them out of jealousy, creating the knights as a pale imitation of their power. Tyler's voice crackled through some kind of void calm. "Catherine, the charges are set in all sectors. We need to go now." But Sebastian wasn't finished. With a gesture, he froze everyone in place except for Emma and me. "If I can't have my heir," he snarled, "I'll take the last of the original bloodline instead." He lunged for Emma, crystalline claws extended. I moved without thinking, decades of suppressed void energy surging through my veins. Time seemed to slow as I intercepted Sebastian's attack. But I wasn't fast enough. Sebastian's claws raked across Emma's chest, drawing blood that shimmered with golden light. She stumbled backward, the ancient night piece falling from her grasp. As it hit the ground, something unprecedented happened. The chess piece shattered, releasing a burst of pure void energy that connected with Emma's blood. Golden light exploded outward, and suddenly we weren't in the void anymore. We were somewhere else, somewhere older, and we weren't alone. Standing before us were figures in ancient robes, their eyes glowing with the same golden light as Emma's. The original knights. One of them stepped forward, looking at Emma with tears in her eyes. "My dear great-granddaughter," she said, "we've been waiting a very long time for you to find us." The chamber we found ourselves in defied physics. Golden light flowed like water along crystalline walls that seemed to be made of pure, solidified time. The original knights surrounded us, their forms shifting between human and something far more ancient. Emma swayed on her feet, golden blood still seeping from Sebastian's wound. Her great-grandmother, who introduced herself as Lady Alara, placed a hand over the injury. The wound sealed instantly, leaving behind a mark in the shape of a complex geometric pattern. "Your blood remembers who you are," Alara said softly, just as Catherine's intervention helped Mason remember his true nature. Mom stepped forward, but something was different about her. In this ancient place, her disguise fell away completely. Her eyes held the same golden light as the original knights. "You're one of them," I breathed, understanding finally dawning. "That's how you knew about all of this." "I was sent to infiltrate Sebastian's knights," Mom explained, "to protect both you and Emma. We knew Sebastian would try to use the combined power of the two bloodlines, the corrupted void energy of his line and the pure energy of the originals. What we didn't expect was for you two to actually fall in love." Emma moved to stand beside me, her hand finding mine. The moment we touched, energy surged between us, gold and silver intertwining. "That's impossible," Sebastian snarled, still held immobile by whatever power this place possessed. "The bloodlines should destroy each other on contact. Unless," Richard said quietly, "they choose to merge willingly." He turned to me with tears in his eyes. "Mason, I'm so sorry for all the deception, but we had to wait until both your powers manifested naturally. If we had told you the truth too soon, Sebastian would have." He trailed off as the chamber began to shake. Through the crystalline walls, we could see the void collapsing in on itself. "The charges Tyler set," Mom said urgently. "They're destabilizing Sebastian's entire network. We don't have much time." Alara nodded gravely. "The time has come to make a choice. Mason, Emma, together, you have the power to either seal the void forever, protecting humanity from Sebastian's plans, or to open it fully, allowing for a natural merger between realms that wouldn't destroy human life." But she continued, "Either choice comes with a price. Sealing the void will strip all of us, original knights and corrupted ones alike, of our powers. Opening it will transform humanity, but more gradually, over generations instead of Sebastian's forced evolution." Emma's hand tightened in mine. "There's something else you're not telling us," she said, looking at Alara intently. "Something about why Sebastian really wanted us together." Alara exchanged a look with my mother, who nodded sadly. "Your union," Alara explained, "was prophesied centuries ago, but not in the way Sebastian interpreted it. He thought bringing the bloodlines together would give him the power to control both void and reality. The truth is," she waved her hand, and an image appeared in the center of the chamber. "Emma and me, but not quite us. Alternative versions, hundreds of them, stretching across different timelines. In every reality, in every timeline, you two find each other," Alara said softly. "And in every reality, you have to make this same choice. This is the nexus point, the moment that decides the fate of not just our world, but all possible worlds." Sebastian laughed bitterly. "Now you see why all the manipulation was necessary. The bloodlines must be kept apart. The power you two could wield together is not yours to control." Emma cut him off. She turned to me, her eyes swirling with golden light. "Mason, there's something else you need to know. Something I discovered in Sebastian's private chambers when I got the black box. Something about Richard and us." Emma's hands trembled as she pulled out a worn leather journal from her robe. I found this in Sebastian's chambers. It's Richard's personal diary. Richard's face went pale. Emma, wait dash. But she was already reading. March 15th, 1989. Catherine doesn't know yet, but Sebastian's plan is already in motion. The binding of the bloodlines was never about power. It was about love. My love for Catherine. Sebastian promised if I helped him, he would make her love me instead of him. I agreed. God help me, I agreed. Mom's golden eyes widened in shock. Richard, what did you do? Emma continued reading. September 3rd, 1989. The ritual worked. Catherine's memories of her love for Sebastian have been erased and replaced. She believes she loves me, has always loved me. Our son will be born in 6 months. Sebastian says the void energy in his blood will remain dormant, making him appear to be mine instead of his. The perfect cover. The chamber fell silent. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Richard, the man I'd called father my entire life, hadn't just been part of the deception. He'd orchestrated it. I'm sorry, Richard whispered, tears streaming down his face. Catherine, I loved you so much. Watching you with him, knowing you were carrying his child, I couldn't bear it. But then, raising Mason, being his father in every way that mattered. I never regretted loving either of you. Sebastian's laughter echoed through the chamber. Oh, this is Rich, the faithful guardian, the loving father. Nothing but a lovesick fool who made a deal with the devil. But Mom was looking at Richard with something complex in her eyes. Not hatred, but understanding mixed with profound sadness. That's why you helped us in the end. Why you gave Emma the black box. You were trying to make it right. The ritual, Emma said suddenly. The one they used to alter Catherine's memories. It left traces in the void energy, didn't it? That's why Sebastian needed me specifically. My original bloodline powers could have restored Catherine's true memories during the binding ceremony. Alara nodded gravely, which would have given Sebastian control over both bloodlines through their original connection. A failsafe, in case his primary plan didn't work. The chamber shuddered again, more violently this time. Through the crystalline walls, we could see the void continuing to collapse. We're running out of time, Tyler's voice crackled through the void calm. The charges are cascading. 10 minutes before total collapse. I looked at Emma, seeing her in a completely new light. Everything, our meeting, our falling in love, the past 7 years together, had been orchestrated as part of this cosmic conspiracy. And yet, the prophecy, I said slowly. You said in every timeline, every reality, we find each other. That means what we feel, what we built together, it's real. Beyond their manipulation. Emma's eyes met mine, gold and silver energy swirling between us. Mason, there's one more page in the diary. Something about why Sebastian really killed James Morrison. Before she could read it, Sebastian broke free from the chamber's hold with a roar of void energy. Enough! Dark crystals erupted from the ground, separating us. But in that moment of chaos, I saw something through our connected energy, a flash of Emma and Richard together in the basement when I wasn't home. The way they looked at each other, the truth hit me like a physical blow. The affair I'd initially suspected, it was real, but it was just one small part of a much larger betrayal. Sebastian's attack had shattered the chamber's peaceful atmosphere. Dark crystals erupted everywhere, forcing us all to separate. Through the chaos, I kept my eyes on Emma and Richard, watching how they moved in unconscious synchronization. How had I been so blind? Mason, focus. Mom's voice cut through my thoughts. She was holding back a wave of void energy with her golden light. We could deal with personal matters later. Right now, we need to dash. She never finished that sentence. Sebastian had appeared behind her, his crystalline claws piercing through her shoulder. But instead of blood, golden light poured from the wound. You took everything from me, Catherine, he snarled. My air, my nights, my destiny. Now I'll take everything from you. Emma screamed. Pure golden energy erupted from her, shattering Sebastian's crystals. In that moment of clarity, I saw another memory through our connection, Emma and Richard in an intimate embrace, but there was something wrong about it. Richard's eyes were glowing silver, and Emma seemed different. The final page. Emma shouted to me while holding back Sebastian's assault. Read it. You need to understand. The diary had fallen near my feet. With shaking hands, I picked it up and turned to the last entry. December 24th, 2024. The guilt is eating me alive. Emma discovered the truth about James Morrison's research. He hadn't just found population projections. He'd found proof that Sebastian's void energy corrupts free will. Every intimate moment between nights, every seemingly voluntary betrayal, it's all been Sebastian pulling strings. Even my feelings for Catherine. Were they ever real? Or just more of his manipulation? Emma confronted me about it yesterday. That's when Sebastian took control, forced me to, with Emma. No, I won't let him use me as his puppet anymore. The basement security footage from last week. Mason needs to see it. Needs to understand that what he thinks he saw between Emma and me wasn't real. We were both under Sebastian's control. The truth about James Morrison's death is even worse. He didn't just find proof of mind control. He found proof that Sebastian had done this before. Countless times. In reality after reality. Orchestrating the same betrayals. Feeding off the pain they cause. But this time will be different. This time, I'm leaving this diary where Emma will find it. This time, I choose to break the cycle. Mason, if you're reading this, I'm so sorry. Everything you think you know about Emma's betrayal is wrong. Sebastian made us act out his sick game, but Emma never stopped loving you. Fight for her. Fight for Dash. The entry ended abruptly. Looking up from the diary, I saw Richard standing between Sebastian and my mother, his silver knight pin glowing brighter than ever. No more puppets, Richard declared. He reached up and ripped the pin from his lapel. The moment it came free, his eyes cleared. Catherine Mason, I remember everything now. My real feelings, my real choices. Sebastian laughed, but there was an edge of desperation to it. You think breaking free of one pin changes anything? I've orchestrated this dance across 1,000 realities. The betrayed husband, the cheating wife, the guilt-ridden father. It feeds me, makes me stronger. You'll never dash. Look, Emma's voice cut through his rant. Through the crystalline walls, we could see them, hundreds of other versions of ourselves in other timelines, all reaching the same realization at the same moment, all breaking free. Tyler, Mom shouted into her void comm. The charges. Now! But you're still in the blast zone? Tyler's voice crackled back. Emma's hand found mine. Together, she said, like every other version of us. We end this now. The void was collapsing, timelines were converging, and I finally understood the true betrayal, and who was really responsible. As Tyler's charges began to detonate across the void, reality itself seemed to shudder. Through the crystalline walls, we could see hundreds of other versions of ourselves making their final stands against Sebastian. But something was different in our timeline. You want to know the real reason I killed James Morrison? Sebastian's voice had changed, becoming multi-layered, as if every version of him was speaking at once. He discovered that this timeline, this specific reality, is the anchor point. What happens here affects all other realities. Emma stepped forward, golden energy swirling around her. That's why you needed us to believe I was having an affair with Richard. In every other timeline, the betrayal was real. But here I had to manufacture it, Sebastian snarled. Because you too, your love was too strong. The natural betrayal wouldn't take hold. Do you know how infuriating that was? The one timeline that could affect all others, and you wouldn't play your parts. Through our connected energy, I saw the full truth. The basement security footage I'd seen, the suspicious texts, the late-night meetings. All of it had been staged under Sebastian's mind control. He needed me to believe in the betrayal, needed my pain to complete his ritual. Mom was holding back waves of void energy, her golden light flickering. Mason, Emma, listen carefully. This timeline is different for a reason. You too, you're the first versions of yourselves to truly break the cycle. In every other reality, doubt poisoned your love. But here we found the truth. I finished. That's why you left the GoPro footage for me to find, isn't it, Emma? You knew that even under Sebastian's control, you'd left clues. Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. Every time he forced Richard and me to act out scenes for the camera, I fought his control enough to leave signs. The way I'd look at the camera with clear eyes for just a moment, the subtle warnings in my words. But there's something else, Richard said, his voice stronger now that he was free of Sebastian's control. Something about your mother, Mason, about why she had to fake her death 15 years ago. Sebastian lunged forward with impossible speed, trying to stop Richard from speaking. But he was too late. Catherine discovered she was pregnant again, Richard revealed. But this time, the child would be born with both bloodlines naturally merged. Sebastian wanted to use the baby as a vessel to transfer his consciousness into a body that could control both void and reality. Mom's golden light flared brighter. I couldn't let him have my daughter, so I hid her with the original Knights, wiped all trace of her existence from this reality. She's been training, growing stronger. And now, a new figure stepped through one of the crystalline walls. A teenage girl with eyes that swirled with both gold and silver light. My sister, the living proof that the bloodlines could merge naturally. Sebastian screamed in rage, void energy exploding outward. But as the charges continued to detonate across the void, as timeline after timeline began to collapse, I saw one final memory through my connection with Emma. The night before all this began, when I thought she was having an affair, she had actually been meeting with my sister, preparing for this moment. But something had gone wrong, something that would change everything. And that's when I saw it. The real security footage from that night, the truth that would shatter both reality and my heart. The real security footage played out in my mind through our connected energy. The basement, that night last week, Emma was there, but not with Richard. She was with my sister, Sarah, and they weren't alone. Are you sure about this? Emma asked, her voice trembling. Once we do this, there's no going back. Sarah nodded, her gold and silver eyes glowing in the darkness. It's the only way to stop Sebastian. But Mason can never know the whole truth. And then my father walked in a frame. Not Richard, not Sebastian, but someone else entirely. The man who stepped into view was me. An older version of me, from a timeline where everything had gone wrong, where Sebastian had won. The ritual has to be completed, my older self said. In every other timeline, Sebastian orchestrated betrayals between Emma and Richard to feed his power. But here, in this anchor timeline, we have a chance to break the cycle. We just need one true betrayal. One that will hurt more deeply than any affair. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Emma hadn't been sleeping with Richard. The betrayal was something far worse. I'm so sorry, Mason, Emma whispered in the present, tears streaming down her face. We had to make you suspect an affair. Had to keep you focused on Richard, because if you discovered what we were really doing. In the footage, I watched as Emma, Sarah, and my older self performed a ritual. One that would ensure that when Sebastian tried to merge the bloodlines, when he attempted to control this timeline's version of me, he would instead be drawn into a trap that required the ultimate sacrifice. The baby, I whispered, finally understanding. You're pregnant, but it's not mine, is it? It's as the other version of me. Emma nodded, her hand moving to her stomach. A child born of the same soul from different timelines. The ultimate paradox. When Sebastian tries to take control of you during the binding, the paradox will trap him forever. But the price is that our child, I said, my voice breaking, our future, everything we planned, it was all sacrifice for this plan. Sebastian began to laugh, a horrible, knowing sound. Now you see, the betrayal I orchestrated with Richard was nothing compared to this. Your own wife, carrying your own child, but not yours at all. The pain, it's exquisite. He raised his hands, void energy crackling as he began the binding ritual. But something was wrong. His power wasn't flowing toward me as he intended. Now, Sarah shouted. Emma's hand found mine one last time. I never stopped loving you, Mason. But sometimes love means making impossible choices. Your other self, he showed me what happens if Sebastian wins. The horrors he would unleash. This was the only way. As Sebastian's power reached for me, it encountered the paradox we had created, the impossible child Emma carried, the merger of the same soul across timelines. The void itself seemed to scream. And in that moment, watching reality tear itself apart, I finally understood the true meaning of betrayal. The void was collapsing around us as Sebastian's power turned inward, drawn into the paradox trap we had created. His screams echoed across multiple realities as the truth of what we had done hit him. "No," he roared, his form flickering between timelines. "This is impossible. The child, the paradox, you've doomed us all." But Emma stood firm, golden light pulsing around her pregnant belly. My sister Sarah stepped forward, adding her hybrid energy to the containment field. Through the crystalline walls, we could see other versions of ourselves watching, waiting. "Mason," my older self called out, his voice strained. "There's something else you need to know. About the baby, about what it really means." Mom cut him off. "There's no time. Tyler's charges are about to reach critical mass. We need to complete the binding now." The ground beneath us shook as reality itself began to tear apart. Sebastian's power, drawn to the paradox child Emma carried, was creating a vacuum in the void. Through our connected energy, I could feel the pull of it, the way it threatened to draw in not just Sebastian, but all of us. "The truth is," Emma said, her voice breaking, "the baby isn't just a trap for Sebastian. It's a reset button. When the paradox collapses in on itself, it won't just trap Sebastian. It will rewrite every timeline, undo every manipulation he's ever made." My older self nodded grimly. "A fresh start. For everyone. But the price. The price is our memories," Sarah finished. "Everything we are, everything we've experienced, it will all be rewritten. In the new timeline, none of this will have happened." Richard stepped forward, free of Sebastian's control at last. "That's why the affair deception was necessary. If Mason had discovered the true plan too soon, if his pain hadn't been focused on the wrong betrayal, the paradox wouldn't have generated enough power," my older self said. "It needed real emotion, real pain, but directed away from Emma and the baby until the last possible moment." Through the collapsing void, I could see other versions of Emma and me, all reaching this same moment of understanding. In every timeline, we had found different paths, but they all led here. Sebastian made one last desperate attempt to break free, his void energy lashing out wildly. "You don't understand what you're doing. The reset, it won't just change the future. It will dash." But before he could finish, Emma doubled over in pain. The paradox child was reacting to the collapsing timelines. "Mason," she gasped, reaching for me, "I need you to know, in every reality, in every possible timeline, choosing you was never the betrayal. The betrayal was having to sacrifice our love to save everyone else." The walls between realities were crumbling now. Tyler's voice crackled through the void calm. 10 seconds to total collapse. As everything we knew began to unravel, I made my final choice. One that would change not just our timeline, but every possible reality. In that final moment, as reality crumbled around us, I understood everything. The affair I'd suspected between Emma and Richard, the basement meetings, the secret texts, all of it had been orchestrated to shield me from a far deeper betrayal. Not a betrayal of love, but a betrayal of fate itself. "There's something else," my older self said, his voice urgent as the void collapsed around us. "Something about the reset that Emma doesn't know, that none of them know." Through our connected energy, he shared one final vision, the truth he'd discovered in his timeline. The reset wouldn't just erase our memories. It would erase the very concept of the void, the Knights, the original bloodline. Everyone would be reborn as normal humans, living normal lives. Everyone except one person. The anchor point. I breathed, finally understanding. Someone has to remember. Someone has to carry the weight of all timelines, all possibilities. That's why you came back. Not just to help create the paradox, but to warn me. Emma's eyes widened as she realized what this meant. "No," she whispered. "Mason, please." But I could see in her eyes that she knew my choice was already made. In every other reality, the reset would give everyone a fresh start. But here, in the anchor timeline, One version of me had to remember everything, had to carry the burden of knowing what was sacrificed. Tyler, I spoke into the void calm. Detonate the final charges. Now! Sebastian screamed as the paradox pulled him in, his power finally turning against him. The child Emma carried, my child, yet not my child, pulsed with impossible energy as timelines began to merge and reset. I'll find you, I promised Emma as reality began to fade. In a new timeline, in every timeline. And this time, we'll just be us. No nights, no void, no destiny. Just love. She smiled through her tears. But you'll remember, you'll have to carry this alone. Not alone, Sarah said, stepping forward. Big brother, did you really think I'd let you bear this burden by yourself? My sister. The natural merger of bloodlines. The proof that love could overcome even the void's corruption. Took my hand. Together, we would remember. Together, we would watch over the new timeline, ensuring Sebastian's manipulation could never take root again. As the reset wave swept through reality, I saw infinite possibilities unfold. Emma and me meeting for the first time again and again across countless new timelines. Always finding each other, but this time without manipulation or destiny. Just two people falling in love. Richard would be there too, freed from Sebastian's influence, being the father he always wanted to be. Mom would live her life without having to hide or fight. And somewhere in the new timeline, Emma would carry a different child, our child, born of simple human love rather than cosmic paradox. The last thing I saw before the reset completed was Emma's face, peaceful at last, as she began her new life. A life free from the burden of knowing what she'd had to sacrifice in another reality. I love you, she whispered as she faded away. Find me again. Always, I promised. And then everything went white. Final update. 1 year later. I sit in a coffee shop, watching the world go by. Sarah sits beside me, both of us bearing the memory of what was lost and what was saved. Across the street, I can see Emma walking into her real estate office, living her new life. She doesn't remember me, doesn't remember us, doesn't remember the choice she made to save every reality. But sometimes when our eyes meet by chance, I see a flicker of something. Recognition, perhaps, or maybe just the first spark of what will become love again. After all, as my other self proved, some loves transcend even the rewriting of reality itself. I check my phone. It's almost time. In a few minutes, I'll accidentally bump into her outside that office, just like I do in every timeline now. And we'll begin again. But this time, we'll write our own story. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please subscribe to the channel and see you soon.